taking into account the over liquidity of Polish banking sector. Can you comment on that?
Okay, that's the first one. Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you for the great session. I'm just wondering whether you following on the debate on green QE, because today we heard some comments about if it's an appropriate tool for right now for the problems that we're facing or not. Actually, right now the discussion in England after the contracting new governor of the Bank of England is that actually green QE is quite probable in the UK, meaning that it's not a QE that entails buying up, purchasing assets that are purely green, but simply the other way. It's not purchasing assets that are fossil fuel. Yeah, so that would be my question.
Thank you. Do you want to answer those two right now, or?
Yeah, I think that I can refer to Mateusz, where we have the problem of the over liquidity in the banking sector for sure. However, we also know that this over liquidity is not equally distributed among Polish banks. So what I have in my mind is just to start, a kind of thinking about more targeted repo operations, okay? And so finding, well, to use a metaphor, maybe, okay, I to take this risk to find a kind of a more specific operation, somehow in between, theoretical, TLTRO Polish one, so this targeted long-term refinancing operations ECB is using. I'm not, arguing for doing this in Poland, so we may think about a more targeted repo operations, and once, well, let's imagine a given bank, is starting to finance, a very huge green investment project, maybe this very given bank will need, more liquidity, and in this case, I think that NDP maybe can assist such a bank, in offering more liquidity. Okay? But for sure, I said this in order to to start the thinking about such a measure, not to introduce such measures probably right now.
Okay, yeah.
So just want to report on the two questions actually. So I'm glad that you mentioned the collateral framework. I think that's typically one policy where you could integrate climate change issues there. And as you say, if we kind of treat brown and green assets differently in the collateral framework, this has then impact on the real economy.
Yeah.
Now the question is how to treat. So basically, we have to offer better condition to green assets and worse condition to brown assets. Now the question is in which direction do we go? From the starting point, do we impose worse condition for brown, or do we start with green assets? And I think here you mentioned that there are some concern about the quality of the balance sheet. QE raised concern on the quality of the balance sheet. And I think climate risk also raised the same concern on the quality of the balance sheet of the central bank and the financial sector. And what we know, I think we know more where the risks are than where the opportunities are. So I think we're better placed to assess which assets are really brown than which asset will be green in the future. So in a sense, as you say, the Bank of England decision is not to restart green QE, but it's basically to reshuffle a bit the existing QE or what they have in the balance sheet. And what they want to do is to exclude all assets. And that goes in that direction. They know that are the risky assets. They think, so instead of trying to say, we're going to push green assets, at least we're going to exclude the one that we know are risky or going against the Paris Agreement. And in Poland, if in general you have two higher haircuts, then you could say, you could think of a political position saying, we're going to decrease the haircut for everyone, except for the wrong one, because what we're going to risky, and in our haircuts, we have to reflect the risk of these policies.
Maybe also a few comments on the green QE issue. And my most important comment is that quantitative easing typically involves relatively limited private sector assets. So if you look at the ECB, it purchases a huge amount of government bonds. Also purchases some corporate bonds, also some bank bonds, but certainly much more limited volume. So if we think that there are two issues, what could be the marginal impact on the private sector purchases, private sector asset purchases. So that I'm in favor of excluding the brown assets. In that I very much agree, but I think the impact would be very limited. But I think a much more important issue is what to do with government bonds, because if you look at, let's say, governments in the euro area, some are operating countries which are greener, and others are operating countries which are browner. And better to make a discrimination between, let's say, I don't know, Finland and Italy, for example. Finland is greener than Italy in purchasing government bonds, and I think that's a very also politically charged issue. And I don't think that even whatever Madame Lagarde will conclude, she would, I think, never go that way. But that could be the more impactful part of a green QE. If you just consider that the private sector assets which are relatively low, I think the impact will be very, very small.
Okay, nice. Yeah, question from Mateusz.
So,
Or comment.
no, it's a question. Quite recently, the Technical Experts Group by the European Commission has agreed on the taxonomy of sustainable investment. I don't know if you are familiar with this taxonomy. It's the 400+ pages document listing in details the types of investments which are green and not green. Obviously, it's this is more for the private, I would say, investors, even not banks, than for central banks or fiscal policy agents. But I wonder whether you think it's somehow applicable for this kind of choices you mentioned. What is green, what is not green, what is brown, what is not brown, and I wonder how is it applicable to problems like we have in Poland, because what we have in Poland now, it's not that which investments are bad, because this is quite easy. But what we really need is the support for good investments. Yes. So obviously your approach is quite safe, but it's not applicable in case of Poland and other countries which have bigger problems than the EU average. Thank you.
Okay, and I guess we're going to take this. I think you had a question.
Maybe subjectively, what do you think if 0 is everything is perfectly fine and 10 is catastrophe? What is your indicator of today's situation? I'm really interested in your subject opinion. And second part of the question, this is global.
Just what do you mean? The current situation being the virus or the climate change? Both. We're both.
Let's concentrate on climate change and preparedness of regulators, preparedness of plan, or what is your vision? Are you optimistic or pessimistic? That's the question. And since this problem is quite global and affect society, because society will pay for either monetary or fiscal policy, what do you think? Is there any plan for mitigation of risk of social instability related to that? Because society will be really concerned about any action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this question. I will ask a question to myself and answer it with the answer to your question, if I can. So thank you for this question. Also, Instytut Jagielloński is the editor of businessalert.pl, so and I, as a retired PR expert, I'm not always trusting what the media is writing or saying. So on one hand, there is a huge buzz, and the media is focusing on several things that are important for them. Imagine that the koalas are still being grilled in Australia, and nobody is doing anything about that because nobody in the media is covering the grilled koala bears in Australia just from today. So this is one thing. The second thing is Professor Żylich did a very good summary what is green, what is not green, but let's approach this in a different way. Imagine a situation solving not macro economic issues, but geopolitical issues. We have a general problem in the geopolitics with dinosaur juice, right? With what is extracted, the oil from the dinosaur juice, the oil extracted from Middle East and Russia and so on. These two mentioned areas provide a significant imbalance and problems also in our daily life. And imagine a situation, and this is a kind of fast forward. Imagine a situation that we are not using dinosaur oil, and we don't need it. Dinosaur juice. We don't need it because we have electric cars and we are self-sufficient. So let's try to make it something good out of the hysteria. So that's my